Derek Riggs is a British artist from Portsmouth, England, born in 1958. Derek was a self-taught cartoonist since childhood. Like many children, he was in love with the comics and drawings of Jack Kirby, father of the Captain America, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and many others. He also liked horror movies and books from the 60s and 70s. And these influences would be reflected in his future works. He decided to study fine arts at the university, a place that he left shortly after feeling misunderstood. In his search for a style of his own, he began experimenting with numbers of designs while freelancing doing covers for London Records Company. In one of many works he presented, there was a painting entitled Electric Matthew Says Hello, which was actually painted for a punk album cover. The look of this character was an exaggerated vision of all those punk clichés represented on an angry monster with a torn shirt. That peculiar piece caught the attention of music manager Rod Smallwood, who was looking for an image that would identify a new band called Iron Maiden that he was representing, and that was about to release their first album. Smallwood later said the members of the band were very shy, so we had to invent a creature that stand up for them. The band adopted the creature after making a few minor modifications. They add more hair to make him look less punk, and renamed him Eddie. This name was originally from a mask they used in stage backdrops. Eddie's first appearance was on the cover of the single Running Free. On this cover, his face was not visible. It was until the release of the album when the mascot that would represent the band to this day could be seen. With an exclusive contract, Derek Riggs would spend much of the 80s illustrating Eddie in several ways. A year after the release of the first album, the second would arrive, Killers, the last album with the frontman Paul Di'Anno. The cover had a smiling Eddie with a bloody axe. In the background, there is a block of flats. This background was inspired by the buildings where Riggs himself lived in those times. But it would be with the third album when things would change drastically. Iron Maiden, with a new singer, would go from being a promising band of the new wave of British heavy metal to being one of the main exponents of the genre, hand in hand with the creation of Derek Riggs, a monster that would begin his path to immortality. The cover was originally created for the song Purgatory from the last album, but Rod Smallwood thought it was too good for a single release and decided to save it for the Number of the Beast. For the following album, Derek Riggs would represent Eddie lobotomized, then as an Egyptian pharaoh, and for the Somewhere in Time album, as a cyborg in a futuristic Blade Runner-inspired environment. This work is one of the most complex made by Riggs, with a huge amount of detail and reference to previous Iron Maiden albums and songs. It also contains little visual jokes and reference added by the artist. It took him 3 months to complete the painting. The process wore him out completely, as he underestimated the complexity of the artwork, and said he would never paint anything this convoluted ever again. From then on, the covers of Iron Maiden were gaining popularity as the group expanded its legend. The covers of Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Seven Song of a Seven Song, or No Praying for the Dying were a success, creating merchandising of Eddie as t-shirts, pins, patches, posters, keyring, even Christmas cards. But little by little, some creative tension was growing between the illustrator and the band, mainly with the manager, Rod Smallwood. The cover of Fear of the Dark in 1992 was the breaking point between Derek Riggs and Iron Maiden. His ideas were rejected as they wanted to update Eddie from the 80s comic style to a more realistic horror. Derek Riggs was always jealous of the originality of his art, and there began the tensions. He was annoyed that the ideas put forward by the band's musicians were copied from popular movies or books. The illustrator spent long hours sketching dozens of original concepts that were discarded, while they proposed ideas that he detested. And that's how, in the 90s, Derek Riggs stopped being Iron Maiden's main illustrator, although he did some single, live, and compilation album covers. Nothing will ever be the same between them. But Derek did not start working. With the fame he had acquired being the cover artist of one of the most famous heavy metal bands, many required his services. Bands like Dickinson, Stratovarius, Gamma Ray put Riggs' art on their records. Even Bruce Dickinson hired him for the cover of his solo album, Accident of Birth. At that time, less and less illustration were seen made with their usual oil and acrylic painting techniques, and it seemed that digital art became his main resource. But this was not only for an artistic decision. After years of using paints and associated products that contained, ironically, heavy metals, this led to health problems, so he focused mostly on digital, but without losing his particular style of character design. In the year that followed, he also worked on book covers, advertising, and he even went back to work with Iron Maiden on a few covers for a single and a compilation album. He's living in Riverdale County, California. He often attends conventions where he interacts with his fans, who are excited to get an autograph, a small drawing, or simply admire the art that has endured through generations. From the father of the most iconic creature in heavy metal.